SERO SED SERIO by Will Sutherland.
How many nights have I returned to this moment? How many times must these visions of my past haunt me? 'Tis every night, it feels. As sure as the moon rises, and as sure as the sun will rise again, so too shall these nightmares plague me. It begins like it always does. The skies are filled with smoke that stains and blackens the clouds above. The undergrowth is nurtured with splashes of blood as weapons clash. Bones break and arrows are let loose from their bows, whistling across the land to find refuge in some unlucky bugger's chest. I find myself bound to the earth by an invisible weight, my legs heavier than the largest oak any forest could muster. All I can do is kneel and watch in my paralysed stupor as my home is overrun with iron-clad soldiers. They terrorise my people, burn down our houses and our crops, and kill our livestock. I see the women make a desperate effort to flee with the children, head for safety across the bogs and safeguard the next generation, while our men fight valiantly to protect what's theirs with great fury and honour. I sense their desperation, fear and rage, for it is as much mine as it is theirs. I feel the cold of night on my fingers, the clumped mud by my boots, the warm streams of blood rippling down across my body, staining my skin with the lost lives of my brothers and sisters. I feel hardened steel pressed firmly against my nape, forcing my eyes to gaze forward deep into the chaos, a disciplinary action from the wardens who would soon absorb me into their accursed ranks. A necessary measure to keep your kind in line. In time, you too will understand. The next moment, I am blinded. Darkness pulled tightly across my vision as if the earth itself had opened up to cleanse its surface of my presence. My nostrils are plugged with smells of hot, burning ash and heavy, rusty stenches of blood. My hot, panicked breaths warm my face. Sweat and vapour cling to my beard as I desperately try to wrench free of my untimely fate until suddenly I wake with a start. Pain ringing around in the back of my skull. I'm not so delicate as to be physically pained by my thoughts, but a sharp strike to the head from the butt of the Warden Captain's sword, however, that I could do without.
Morning is with us, Elias. Are you up? You've been out long enough. Doubt a brute like yourself needs much in the way of beauty sleep to begin with.
The other two Warden soldiers laugh under their breaths in typical bootlicking fashion. Back in the day, I would have seen to it that they'd received a lashing across their haphazardly toothed mouths. But time has worn my claws down. Sides, these slights pale to what my mind may show me in times of weakness. I slowly shift from my spot against the wall to scan the horizon and our surroundings. Seems it had been an uneventful night. Not that I take issue. I am grateful for what sleep I can cling to these days, no matter how disturbed. After night had befallen us, we had taken shelter in what looked like an abandoned shepherd's hut. Only now, as the sun rises, can we bear witness to how this once bountiful land had been desecrated with war. Long stretches of field transformed into forgotten battlegrounds. Spontaneous graves housing what remained of the brave men who once fought there. Their armour laying in chipped and scarred heaps. Their footprints firmly planted, housing small pools of rainwater, and their dried blood clinging to and weighing down whatever few blades of grass stubbornly survived the carnage.
Are you with us, Elias? We are to ride in mere moments, and we will not get far should you not have your wits about you.
I am awake, sir. I just need to get my bearings, then we can depart.
See to it you do. We got lucky last night, but who knows what reivers could be lurking around these parts. I sense we're not far from the border now.
It had been several days since we set off from Alnwick on Lord Percy's orders to cross the Middle Marches. On special order, the captain says, though he will not disclose to me what. I can hazard a guess it must be to do with the reivers. My people. It had been many years since my feet had been on northern soil amongst my kin since being dragged off to war. Cavalry unit, I was made a warden shortly after our loss against the Hanseatic League. But now we've returned from foreign shores. England found itself in a fresh state of peace after a victory over France at Burgundy. A treaty signed for over 75,000 crowns to cease the fighting and return to normality. And to the royals, the dukes, lords, and their respective wardens, that means one thing. A desire to return things to their usual order meant venturing up to the north to subdue the same reiver families they had just made fight their wars for them. I've had more talk of the royal palace and its movements forced down my neck in the last few years than I've endured in my entire life up until now. Though I find myself now in and amongst a barren wasteland of my fallen brothers' souls, I'd take their company over a room full of aristocratic whoresons any day. I think of my family, the Kerrs. I wonder how they are faring. The Kerrs are far from being the weakest reiver family, regardless of which side of the border they find themselves. Still, anything could have happened since my time away. I can only pray for their continued prosperity now. My thoughts are interrupted by the distinct feeling of the warden captain staring daggers into the back of my head, and so I return my focus to the path ahead. Though this squadron treat me like a glorified hound, they'd be a sorry lot without me navigating the way. These southern boys haven't got their senses about them in these lands. To them, it's a dangerous, unfamiliar battlefield. To me, it's just home. So, as long as the wardens are needed, the wardens need me. So I don't feel particularly in danger around these men, whether they hate my guts or not. Besides, the added coin in my pocket never hurt either. I mount my horse and take my place at the front of the pack as we continue our journey, descending down the hill and heading towards a thick brush of trees. From here, we should rejoin the path soon. Doubt the boys will appreciate the detour. I bet a hefty pouch of bronze one of them starts seeing faces in the trees before long. We spend hours travelling, not even stopping for food. Pre-prepared knapsacks of supplies hang by our saddles should we get peckish. Our main and only priority is to cross the border and make contact with the Earl of Buchan, current Lord Warden of the Scottish Middle Marches. At least, so I assumed. The Warden Captain's behaviour was increasingly suspicious. Constantly stopping the squadron to check his own bearings, occasionally changing our route and consulting a map he refused to show the rest of us. A certain joy to manage with while assigned as the navigator. Why not let me see the map? I ask him. Surely I could make heads or tails of it faster than you could. These are my lands.
If you were to be trusted with this map, Reiver, you would have been handed your own. Have faith, lad. I'm merely making certain you take us the desired direction. I should not want to report to Lord Percy how we ended up by the shores of Hartlepool, thanks to an untrustworthy navigator. Now, would I?
I bite my tongue. 'Twould not be worth prying into every little meaning of his words, even if there was something greater lying in wait behind them. He's lucky I know Northumberland like the back of my hand. A lesser man would have got his trails tied by now and likely be wandering off to Whitby. I steel my faith in my captain. Truly, if he detested me like other wardens do, he would have leapt at the opportunity to stab me in the back, with the help of the 2 clods under his command behind us, and leave what remained of me in a ditch. No. My careful actions over the past few years have softened his views on the Reivers, or at the least those of my family. Though I may be viewed a traitor by those I once called family, if I can still help them from my cowardly position, then a traitor I shall remain. We keep riding through this winding path the captain insists taking us on. The sun begins to wane as it starts to sink from the sky, its fall cushioned by thick grey clouds that mask its divine light. Despite this, I feel I could walk our current path with my eyes gouged. I know where we are. We're within spitting distance of my old home. As the captain continues to twist and turn our route, my suspicions evolve into unease and discontent. Surely he doesn't mean to lead us back there. There's nothing there for us, and yet I see it. Across the plain. As if the immortalized memory in my mind had jumped out in front of me. I could feel my stomach turning inside out as we approached, like stepping over from the mortal world into something other. Something dreadful. My own personal hellish landscape etched into this small corner of the northern land. The village seemed unchanged from my memory. Lost to time. Houses once full of healthy, hearty families, now crumbling ruins returning to nature. Grass overruns and consumes old, broken thatch fences. The distinct tranquility that loomed over the wreckage only heightened my discomfort, like a giant crow circling a long expired corpse. Despite my shortening breaths, I choked out another question for the captain. "Is this where you intended to bring us, sir?"
"Indeed,"
he says, stiffer than usual, which I'd not thought possible. "It seems like a fair place to set up camp," I continue, "though we still have some daylight left with us."
"Don't be foolish, old boy. We're here on orders from Lord Percy."
"Sir?"
"If my lord is to be believed, there have been reports of small groups of Reivers making continued pilgrimage to this abandoned slum that, as far as we can tell, has nothing left to offer. We're here to catch them in the act and find out why."
My words finally fail me. I look at him with a disbelief so plainly written across my face that makes it impossible for the captain to ignore. He turns his mare around to face me directly.
"I know what you're thinking, old boy, but it's why Lord Percy chose our squadron specifically. He believes we're dealing with a singular Reiver family here. The Kerrs. And what better way to crack one of their secrets than with the aid of one of their own?"
Before I can muster any kind of rebuttal, I feel his hand on my shoulder. His grip is firm, in a way that I cannot tell if it's to reassure or to oppress.
"I do not wish for you to feel misled by our lord, old boy. He simply recognizes your expertise and wishes to reward you well for it. No one need be harmed. Just help us find the secret they hide from us in this village, and we'll be off. Is that all right with you?"
For a moment, words fail me. I don't know what to think. Is this still all some kind of elaborate ruse, or does he really mean to simply search my old village and leave? Once again, my faith in this man is questioned, but like before, I find myself conceding, surrendering to my belief in his better judgment. As you wish, sir. We'll begin a sweep at once. He smirks and releases his grip, turning and giving the three of us the rundown on the investigation. I dismount my horse, tying the reins to a nearby fence that just barely managed to stay upright as I begin my search. Walking through this village again after being gone for so long was unreal. Though not even animals graced this place with their presence, I could so clearly picture the village that once was, and the hustle and bustle as people passed by each other on the path, carrying their daily yield from their gardens, children chasing each other while their mothers yelled for them to be careful, their pleas falling on deaf ears. The distinct sound of the blacksmith pounding away tirelessly in his workshop while sweating against the grindstone. I enter a small hut, ducking through the door as I look around. What the captain expected to find, I could not say. These houses could offer less to a field mouse, let alone a band of travelling reivers. Does the captain even realise we stand on the same charred grounds I was raised on? While I'm having these doubtful thoughts that I'm ever going to find anything worth of value, I hear a commotion coming from outside, howling and yelling that makes my hairs stand on end. I rush outside to a scene of violence. 2 reivers, likely who'd been waiting in ambush, getting the better of the 2 other wardens who accompanied me and the captain. One lay bested on the ground, gargling his own blood, while his soon-to-be slain ally struggled against the reiver duo. The captain flew past me to their aid.
Don't just stand there! Elias, to arms!
As the captain shouted my name, my feet acted on their own, joining him in the charge. Seemingly, I was not the only one that day to be possessed with an untimely urge, for as the captain yelled my name, one of the reivers immediately set his eyes on me. Did he recognise me? His untimely reaction led to a stab at his gut by my fellow warden. Despite the grievous wound, he found it in himself to power one last blow at his assailant, knocking him off course and allowing his brother-in-arms to finish him off with a well-timed strike through his armour and across his neck, the warden clasping at his wound as blood spurted from it like a grisly waterfall. The gutted reiver tumbled to the ground while the one remaining charged me and the captain. Together, we made light work of him, toppling him like a tree with a slice to the back of his leg, one against the arm he used to wield his sword, and finally one across his chest. I wiped my sword clean against my cuff, as me and the captain each interrogated a body respectively, to fish out what information we could before they left us for the next life. While the captain barked away at the reiver beneath him, I made my way over to the reiver who I believed to have recognised me. I knelt by his side, his eyes fluttering between opened and closed. Seems he still had a light inside of him, defiant to go out. "Why are you here?" I ask him, only to be met with a refusal of grunts swamped in blood. I lean into his ear and whisper, "SERO SED SERIO." Our clan motto, proof of my Kerr lineage, late but in earnest. What other words could ring more true in my current position? I say this unto him in the hopes he'd bestow unto me some understanding of what happened here. He looks about, likely wrestling with his feelings and what precious time he had left. He put his stained hand round the back of my head and pulled me in close, whispering his final words into my ear. "Hagaskaldir, Cerys, Sesford." He released his grip on me and momentarily stared into my eyes. It felt like he was seeking for my soul. I understood his message and offered him a small nod of affirmation. With that, he shut his eyes, finding what peace he could in his final moments. I offered him a prayer as I knelt by his side, keenly interrupted by my captain.
No luck on my end. Find anything out from this savage?
Nothing, sir. The words leapt out of me before I could consider an alternative answer. The captain finished off the Reiver with his sword, stealing him of his last quiet breaths. I knew, deep down in my heart, this was not something I could divulge, even to the captain. He kissed his teeth in frustration and turned away, observing the carnage.
We do well to reconvene before we set off again. Get these bodies moved. We'll give our boys a proper burial. Well, as proper as we can out here in the Badlands. Take those Reiver corpses and place them at either end of the village. Anyone with their wits about them should think twice before entering that way. Then, just maybe, we may be able to sleep soundly tonight. See to it, Elias. Jump to it.
We begin moving the bodies. As instructed, I dump both the Reiver bodies to the outskirts of the village. I can only hope their remains return to nature unperturbed, and not savaged by the land's creatures. We enter the hut the Reivers had been holed up in. The resources they planned to supply themselves with saw me and the captain comfortably through the evening. As night fell, we took turns standing watch while the other slept. When it was my turn, I lit a torch and found my way to my horse and left the village, heading northwest into the forest beyond. There was something I needed to see with my own eyes. The final words left to me by my Reiver brother. To find out the secret of what was truly happening in my home. I moved through the trees, my torch lighting the way, casting grand, twisting shadows of branches against the towering bark of the trees. The words of the fallen Reiver echo in my head. Hagaskaldir, Cerys, Sesvet. Two of these words had great meaning to me, but how did the third tie them all together? I continued into the overgrowth in search of the former. Hagaskaldir, as I remember, was a location of great urgency amongst the family. Whenever the village was in danger, Hagaskaldir was a safe place for the mothers, healers and children to escape to and seek haven until the tides of war had washed over. It is a spot I had rarely visited in my lifetime, as it was not in my nature to turn tail and seek shelter when enemies stood on our doorstep, so finding my way proved more difficult than I anticipated. But eventually, I found myself at the edge of the forest, peering out across the night's horizon, dimly lighting the bogs in the pale moonlight. Legend has it the Kerr people came from the bogs. A fitting location for Hagaskaldir. Between the boundaries of forest and bog stood a large old willow tree, the cold clinging to its long drooping arms. Dismounting my horse and pushing through the branches, I spy a panel. Crafted to blend into the greenery, any mindless Kerr looking to harm vulnerable people would not have the senses about him to find such a thing. But to one who knows its secrets, I lift the panel and gaze into the hole, leading deep underneath the tree and its twisted roots. Lighting the way with my torch, I hear and see a figure approaching. She was dressed darkly, with a small dagger in her left hand. Around her neck was a necklace of bones, a small skull of a feline in its centre. Her fiery red hair tied in a braid behind her head, similar to what the warrior men would wear in their beards.
Is that you? Michael? What hour is this? The children are unnerved. We expected your return much sooner than...
She ceases her words as she looks upon me, eyeing me up and down like some form of mythical creature. I admit, I too was doing the same to her. It had been many years since we had seen each other, and the disbelief was clearly contagious. The fallen Reiver had again spoken a truth I thought too sweet to be true, and yet before me stood the proof.
Elias?
Cerys. She had been in training as next in line to become the village's healer last I saw her, as well as a dear friend. Clearly she had fulfilled her ambitions since dressed in such garbs. Her beliefs had always turned away those of the church, and now in this moment of distress it looked like she had fully embraced her role. Any man of the cloth would see her burned at the stake for looking like she did now.
It's been years. We all thought you were dead.
'Twould might have proved a nobler fate, but here I am all the same.
Truly living up to our clan's motto, aren't you?
She had me there. But unfortunately I could not entertain the pleasantries any longer. I needed to warn her. Why are you here? I thought our village to be lost, destroyed. How is it I find you here and now?
The Kerrs have been using our old home as an outpost. A place of respite while we cross the border, bit by bit. We make pilgrimage to Cessford. Walter Kerr and his family speak of sanctuary there. A place for fragmented Kerrs to rebuild and return to our former strength and glory. The men scout ahead to promise our safety, while we stay behind and safeguard the children. They lay in wait, now beneath us. Have you new news you might bring us? What of Michael?
Things began to make sense for me. This is the secret the village was hiding, and what the dying Reiver had tried to relay to me. This is a secret I had now been trusted with, and I had to make a decision. It is not safe to pass through the village anymore. The Wardens have caught wind of the family's movements. Michael, I take it, was protecting you in this journey?
Indeed, Michael and Edmund. Do you remember him?
Edmund? The blacksmith's boy?
The very same. He's grown after all these years.
His mother is still alive too? A shame her son must return to her in such a state.
You mean to say they are dead?
It pains me to say so. Just this afternoon. By the Wardens.
How is it that you know of this? Elias?
Because he's the one who brought us here.
I turn in surprise, only to catch a small crossbow bolt in my shoulder. I wince in pain and drop to one knee. Cerys shifts and readies her dagger, but I raise an arm, deterring her from charging blindly. The children need her. She cannot lose her life here. The Warden captain drops his hand crossbow back into its pouch, and brandishing his sword, he approaches us slowly.
So, he did tell you something after all, didn't he, Elias? Why else would you abandon your post in the middle of the night? To parley with a witch? What I'd think you possessed if I did not know you to be a Reiver. A fool who doesn't even stop to think not to light a torch in the middle of the night if he does not wish to be followed. It's not enough your comrades died this eve, but you throw me to the wolves soon after. Is that it?
Sir,
Less out of you, old boy. I should have known. Taking in a Reiver would be a bad idea. No sense of honour. If your brutish kind had a sliver of humanity about you, then my 2 men wouldn't have been ambushed by those sordid cowards. And you wouldn't be in the sorry state you are now. It's bad enough you betray your old family for a quick crown, but now you bite the hand that has kept you fed for so long.
I did not betray my family. You tore me from them, made me your pawn, forced me to work against my people.
Is that what you tell yourself when you can't sleep at night? If you really cared so much about your family, what stopped you from trying to escape? Or simply falling on your blade and ending your misery all these years past? You found comfort in our ranks and in our money pouches, free from a land of survival and savages. Enough! Enough! Your poor countenance dies with you.
He approaches me, sword drawn, ready for execution. Once again, I find myself on my knees, paralysed before the fate that lies in front of me. How blind had I been not to have foreseen something like this happening? Had I truly never considered that one day the Wardens would turn their back on me like they had with every other Reiver? I lower my head, frozen in place, as the Warden Captain readies his blade against my nape.
What says you, witch? I must rid myself of this traitor. But if you and your quarry come with me quietly, you may find a much more peaceful end than he finds himself at now.
May a curse befall you, plough and horsen!
Cerys kicks up the hot embers from my dropped torch up at the Warden's face, who recoils in pain as his facial hair is singed.
Elias, go!
I look to her in shock. A moment of opportunity she has granted me. No. Redemption. I spring up and tackle the Warden Captain, knocking his sword from his palm and wrestling him to the ground. We exchange blows as we tumble across the ground, out from under the tree and down into the bogs. He strikes me in my shoulder, where the crossbow bolt still resides. Pain floods through my body like I'd been caught in a thunderstorm. He pulls the bolt out and tries to gut me. I grab his wrists, sweat and spittle staining our faces as we struggle. Our forearms shake, the bolt inches closer my way. I roar in my frenzied efforts and push back. He matches me as the bolt goes nowhere. He raises his knee and bashes it against my hip, throwing my balance. As my grip loosens, he pulls away the bolt and sinks it into my thigh. I cry out as he takes it and again plants it into my flesh, this time into my sides, again and then again. I fall on my back, my head splashing against the puddles of bog water. He mounts me, raising the crossbow bolt up to finish me off.
I'll make sure Lord Percy sends his best to Cessford.
In his moment of reverie, Cerys lets out a cry. He turns to defend himself, avoiding instantaneous death, but still receiving Cerys' dagger firmly in his shoulder. Using the dagger's handle as leverage, I free myself from his trap and turn the tides. Reversing our positions, I rip the helm from his head and grasp it firmly with both my hands. I bring it down upon his skull several times, finally ceasing when his head would be more suited for collecting rainwater. I roll over, panting. My efforts to catch my breath painful and desperate, as the blood loss blackens my vision and blurs my view. Cerys runs over and places my head on her lap. She too can sense I'm not long for this world. Cerys, I know my actions have been shameful. I risked putting the family in grave danger for the sake of my own survival. I only hope my actions now can serve as recompense. Take the horses. They're good mares. They'll swift your journey. There are supplies in the saddle should you need them, and more to be found in the village. The captain had a map should you need it. Travel the northwestern trails and you will be there in a day or two. Tell the clan that... She places her finger to my lips, shushing me.
Shh. You have done enough. Elias, Kerr. The clan will know of your deeds. That you came back to us when it mattered most, and aided us to reach our sanctuary safely.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I could not help more. If only I had more time.
SERO SED SERIO. Late, but in earnest. Is that not what we Kerrs do best?
I fall silent. I feel the heat of battle start to leave my body. In its place, a great chill overtakes me. I shiver. I look up at the clouded stars. My breath hitches. Pray for me, Cerys. I am afraid. I too wish for safe passage to sanctuary. Cerys closes her eyes. I do the same. I feel her hands on either side of my head. Her warm touch soothes my soul.
Remember that we are all brothers. All people, beasts, trees and stone and wind. We all descend from that one great being that was always there, before people lived and named it, before the first seed sprouted.
As she speaks, I feel my body lose its tension. My body softens. Light pours into my vision. I see my village once again. But this time it's different. Unlike the hellish landscape I had revisited so many nights before, this time I see the peaceful, quiet village I bore witness to this day. Still standing, gently rocking in the wind. A permanent reminder of what once was. I start to see people. See the village rebuild itself before me. The community slowly regrows. Women emerge to hang their washed clothes on the line. The smithy and his son, working away at a new iron. I see old friends run past me down the pathways. In the distance, I see my mother and father stood by our door. They're waiting for me. I run over to greet them.
SERO SED SERIO by Will Sutherland, part of the Reiver Voices from the Borders initiative. Performed by Jerome Yates as Elias Kerr, Stephen Stobbs as the Warden Captain, Alice Faith as Cerys Kerr. Directed by Jake Murray. Recorded and co-edited by Edwin Baker and Jonathan Youdale. Final edit, sound and music by Paul G. Clark. Assistant direction by Lowena Olver and Patrick Blair. Recorded at the Northern School of Art, Hartlepool, with thanks to Stuart Drummond. Produced by Elysium Theatre Company, funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, Northumberland County Council and Durham University.